This is a WW3 Emergency update. It's currently Wednesday, January 25th, 2024, and the time is 4:52 p.m. Eastern Time here in the United States. We open with some shocking developments. Russia has reportedly developed an advanced simulator for ground nuclear explosions, engineered to offer a visual simulation of key optical indicators, including the impact effect, light flash, and mushroom dust cloud resulting from a terrestrial nuclear explosion. Russian scientists at the Military Academy of Logistics, named after General of the Army A.V. Krylev, have developed a cutting-edge simulator for ground nuclear explosions, according to the state-run media agency TASS. This recently patented simulator is designed to revolutionize the training of military units, particularly those within the ground forces, for combat operations in environments involving nuclear weapons. The patent describes the simulator's primary objective as providing a realistic visual representation of critical elements associated with a terrestrial nuclear explosion, including impact effects, a dazzling light flash, and the iconic mushroom dust cloud. The technology is poised to be integrated into military unit exercises and hands-on training sessions. This holds the potential to substantially improve the readiness of ground forces for engagements in nuclear weapon scenarios. Vladimir Putin's foreign minister, Sergey Lavrov, has fired more chilling warnings towards the West during a speech in Moscow. Sergey Lavrov has chillingly warned the UK and United States of mounting nuclear risks during a stunning speech as World War III fears continue to explode. Vladimir Putin's foreign minister made the shocking comments during his annual news briefing in Moscow, which saw him launch several warnings against the West. Furthermore, the simulator's application extends to units specializing in radiation, chemical, and biological ground reconnaissance. The report suggests that it will play a vital role in refining the abilities of these units, assisting in determining explosion parameters, and enabling the precise identification of the epicenter. The patent documentation highlights that the new simulator addresses the limitations of its predecessor, the IU-59 nuclear explosion simulator, which has become obsolete and is no longer in production. The Russian foreign minister claimed the U.S. has dismantled step-by-step arms controls and blamed them for creating the hostile context in which Russia de-ratified the New START nuclear treaty. Lavrov said, "They have proclaimed us openly an enemy, but at the same time they want to have a look at our strategic nuclear stockpiles because they say it's quite a different thing." The Russian foreign minister continued, "They talk every day more about a prospective collision of nuclear powers, and every day there are fewer and fewer deterring factors containing factors." However, he still insisted the possibility of talks on strategic stability has not been ruled out. Elsewhere in another swipe brutal towards the U.S., Lavrov also claimed that while America may have ruled the world for 500 years, the global superpower has now been surpassed. The foreign minister also says most of the discussions involving the West have been led by the United States. He began his news conference by alluding to what Russia regards as an aggressive and illegitimate campaign by the West against Russia, but without mentioning the war with Ukraine. The disagreement over renewed talks raises concerns about a potential new arms race, especially as the New START treaty, inked by former Presidents Barack Obama and Dmitry Medvedev in 2010, is scheduled to expire in 2026. The treaty places constraints on U.S. and Russian nuclear weapons while allowing on-site inspections to verify compliance. However, these inspections were halted in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and have yet to resume. Last February, Russian President Vladimir Putin suspended Russia's participation in the START treaty, citing perceived hypocrisy and cynicism from the U.S. and NATO regarding their support for Ukraine. As the Biden administration continues its unwavering support for Ukraine, allocating billions in aid, it faces opposition from some Republicans in Congress who demand a linkage between foreign aid and stricter border policies. Meanwhile, the introduction of the ground nuclear explosion simulator signifies a significant enhancement in the training of Russian soldiers for combat operations in nuclear weapons scenarios. Against the backdrop of the ongoing conflict with Ukraine, Moscow has been showcasing the preparedness of its nuclear forces. In October 2023, Russia conducted a massive retaliatory nuclear strike drills involving missile launches from land-based silos, a nuclear submarine, and long-range bomber aircraft, all overseen by President Vladimir Putin. A Ukrainian drone has struck an oil storage depot in western Russia, causing a massive blaze, officials said, as Kiev's forces apparently extended their attacks on Russian soil ahead of the war's 2-year anniversary. 4 oil reservoirs with a total capacity of 6,000 cubic meters were set on fire after the drone reached Klintsy, a city of some 70,000 people located about 60 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, according to the local governor and state news agency TASS. The strike apparently was the latest in a recently intensified effort by Ukraine to unnerve Russians and undermine President Vladimir Putin's claims that life in Russia is going on as normal before its 17th March presidential election. The attack comes as a number of Russian cities, including Belgorod near the Ukrainian border, canceled their traditional Orthodox Epiphany festivities on Friday due to the threat of Ukrainian drone strikes. It was the first time major public events were known to have been called off in Russia due to the drone threat. Ukrainian national media, quoting an official in Ukraine's intelligence service, said Ukrainian drones on Friday also attacked a gunpowder mill in Tambov, about 600 kilometers south of Moscow. The Ukrainian delegation at the World Economic Forum in Davos held private talks with Western partners, urging expedited and consistent supply of long-range missiles to Kiev. According to the minister, although the topic of long-range missiles was not on the official agenda at the event, it remains a priority area for Ukrainian diplomats. He added that the meetings also addressed the issue of increasing arms production in Europe to sustain long-term security assistance to Ukraine. In December 2023, during a meeting with U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky raised the necessity of supplying Ukraine with U.S.-made ballistic missiles. On another note, a dangerous treaty has been closed. Russia-Iran to sign strategic partnership treaty. The work on the text of the draft document is nearing completion, and as soon as it is over, the presidents of the two countries will decide when and where it will be signed, he said. It will happen soon since the treaty, is at the final stage. However, in his words, it is too early to say when exactly the treaty will be signed, but it is far enough along that any preliminary meetings before the signing are not needed. We should definitely be worried. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said earlier that a new treaty between Russia and Iran was expected to be inked at an upcoming meeting between the two countries' leaders. The document will cover the entire spectrum of Russian-Iranian ties, she explained. We now shift to news from our own troops. The Navy destroyer gravely shot down 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles Wednesday in the Gulf of Aden, fired by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, according to U.S. Central Command. It was the latest salvo in a months-long effort involving fellow destroyers, Carney, Laboon, Mason, and Thomas Hudner, to keep the Red Sea and surrounding waters safe for commerce. CENTCOM said the Houthis launched 3 anti-ship ballistic missiles toward the U.S.-flagged, owned, and operated container ship MV Maersk Detroit as it transited the Gulf of Aden. The gravely intercepted 2 of those missiles while the other landed in the sea. There are no reports of injuries or damage to the ship, CENTCOM said. We've also heard today that Iraq's leader wants U.S. troops out and that he's willing to do anything for it, including the possibility of working together with Russia. Iraq's Prime Minister, Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, has recently voiced his country's disinterest in hosting the 2,500 troops deployed in support of the mission against ISIS. Despite these public statements, There haven't been any formal requests made to the Pentagon or the White House by the Iraqi government, as reported by U.S. officials. In interviews with Reuters and the Wall Street Journal, Prime Minister Soudani cited the U.S. presence as destabilizing and no longer justified, emphasizing the need to reorganize the relationship to avoid becoming a target for any party, internal or foreign, seeking to disrupt stability in Iraq and the region. This situation also pertains to Iran-backed militias, which have increased their attacks on bases housing U.S. troops in both Iraq and Syria over the past few months, intensifying their efforts since mid-October. In response to these developments, a U.S. official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, stated that there is agreement on the need to transition from the coalition to defeat ISIS to bilateral arrangements, considering the success achieved over the past decade. We now cross the ocean to the seas of Taiwan. U.S. Navy announces missile destroyer will pass through Taiwan Strait. China reacts. China has objected to this, calling it a provocation. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet announced that the missile destroyer USS John Finn passed through the Taiwan Strait on the 24th. They objected to the move, saying it was undermining peace and stability. The Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command, which has jurisdiction over Taiwan and the East China Sea, issued a statement on its official Chinese social media account saying the American military frequently engages in provocative acts and maliciously attacks the region. The U.S. Navy announced that a missile destroyer had passed through the Taiwan Strait, and China has responded by calling it a provocation. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet announced that the missile destroyer USS John Finn passed through the Taiwan Strait on the 24th. According to Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, the missile destroyer passed through the Taiwan Strait from north to south. The passage through the Taiwan Strait demonstrates America's commitment to protecting freedom of navigation for all nations, the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet said in a statement, and must not be forced. In response, the Chinese military's Eastern Theater Command, which has jurisdiction over Taiwan and the East China Sea, issued a statement on its official Chinese social media account, saying, "The American military frequently engages in provocative acts and maliciously attacks the region." They objected to the move, saying it was undermining peace and stability. Next to this, NATO has kicked off its biggest military exercise in decades. Steadfast Defender aims to show that the Western alliance can rapidly deploy forces from North America and elsewhere to reinforce Europe. NATO members in Sweden are taking part in the drills, involving around 90,000 troops. General Chris Cavoli has said on Thursday that the drills would rehearse NATO's execution of its regional plans, the first defense plans the alliance has drawn up in decades, detailing how it would respond to a Russian attack. NATO did not mention Russia by name in its announcement, but its top strategic document identifies Moscow as the most significant and direct threat to member states. The alliance also said that taking part will be more than 50 ships, from aircraft carriers to destroyers, more than 80 fighter jets, helicopters, and drones, and at least 1,100 combat vehicles, including 133 tanks and 533 infantry fighting vehicles. Steadfast Defender 2024 will demonstrate NATO's ability to rapidly deploy forces from North America and other parts of the alliance to reinforce the defense of Europe, NATO said. The war games will contain a simulated emerging conflict scenario with a near-peer adversary, Cavoli told reporters in Brussels after a 2-day meeting of national chiefs of defense. During the second part of the Steadfast Defender exercise, the focus will be on deploying NATO's Quick Reaction Force to Poland. The exercise, the biggest since the 1988 Reforger drill during the Cold War, comes as NATO has overhauled its defenses since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The alliance has dispatched thousands of troops to its eastern flank and drawn up its most extensive plans since the collapse of the Soviet Union to protect itself from a Russian attack. The head of the British Army has said we should train and equip a citizen army to ready the country for any potential land war. The comments from General Sir Patrick Sanders, who stands down as Chief of the General Staff in 6 months, are being seen as a warning that British men and women could be called up to the armed forces if NATO were to go to war with Russia. And now to close on yesterday's news. A large fire has broken out at an oil refinery in southern Russia. Meanwhile, the future of prisoner swaps, which have freed hundreds of soldiers, appears to be in limbo after the Kremlin commented on the crashing of a military transport plane in Belgorod. Both of the Russian Il-76 transport plane's black boxes have been recovered from the crash site, according to the state media outlet RIA Novosti. Emergency services told the agency the aircraft's flight parameters recording device and a voice recorder were in good condition. A large oil refinery was set ablaze in southern Russia last night. The cause of the fire and the scale of the damage were not immediately clear, but it was extinguished this morning. Several energy infrastructure facilities have been hit by fire or drone attacks across Russia in the past week. Unofficial Telegram channels claimed drones had been responsible this time too. The Kremlin has said it is unclear how what it claims was the downing of a Russian plane carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war will affect future swaps. The Ilyushin Il-76 military transport aircraft had been taking them to Belgorod airfield for an exchange at the Kolotilovka border checkpoint when it was shot down, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Nobody can tell you how it would affect the prospects for extending this exchange process, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told Interfax news agency. Hundreds of captured soldiers have been exchanged over the course of the war. Ukraine has not confirmed whether it was involved in the incident or whether Ukrainian prisoners were on board. This brings an end to the update. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep up with the most recent information. Pray for our troops, they truly deserve it. I'm wishing everyone a restful sleep and reminding them to be ready, alert, and persistent throughout these trying times.